Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Modern Markets Podcast. I'm here with Bradley Kam from Unstoppable Domains. He is one of the co-founders and head of biz dev at Unstoppable Domains. And if you would, Bradley, just go ahead and introduce yourself. What has your journey with Unstoppable Domains been like? And, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
For sure, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
So my background, I'm from Atlanta, started in the real estate field. So I was starting companies during the last recession, actually. And somewhere around 2012, realized that I was in the wrong game. The market was too small and too manual, and I needed to get into software. So I decided to move to San Francisco and started working on a company called Talkable, which is a Y Combinator-backed marketing software company, selling e-commerce companies. But when I moved to San Francisco, I moved into this house called 20 Mission, been profiled in a bunch of newspapers and referred to as a house that Bitcoin built. And so the second Bitcoin exchange was in the US was launched in our basement. Vitalik gave talks in our courtyard before Ethereum launched, and pretty much everybody in the building was a Bitcoin hacker. So I moved to San Francisco to work on a marketing software company and was immediately introduced to crypto. Relatively soon after that, fell down the rabbit hole. This is like early 2013, and started thinking about it, playing around with it, working on stuff, and kind of knew that I would eventually be doing something in crypto, but it took until 2018 for me to actually fully get to the game.
Awesome. By the way, I actually live in Atlanta, so funny that.
Oh, well.
Yeah, awesome. First of all, what is Unstoppable Domains and what benefits could people find from using the service?
Sure. So Unstoppable Domains is a domain registry business. So think of it similar to a .com. So VeriSign, company owns .com. We build our own domain name extensions. So one is called .crypto and another is called .zil. The difference is that our domains are not part of the traditional DNS system. Domains are ERC 721 tokens. They're NFTs. They're stored inside of your wallet. And this is very different than a traditional domain because a traditional domain has a custodian as a requirement. You have to store your domain with GoDaddy or some other registrar. A blockchain domain, you just store inside of your wallet. And because of that, it means that you're the only one who can move it around. You're the only one who can update it, which means that you're the only one that can put up a website. You're the only one that can take down a website. Very different than the way that the traditional DNS and the traditional internet works.
Right. And then I was actually doing some research. And so the main database is ICANN, ICANN. So that's like the international database that everybody has to join to be a part, to have your domain registered. So this is obviously like a decentralized off the ICANN database solution.
Yeah, so ICANN is like the international nonprofit that manages the current namespace, and so you've got DNS servers, and if you're going and looking up a website, inside of a browser, you're going to be hitting the traditional DNS servers, which are essentially centralized. They have people who can control them.
Right. Now, and there's another term, Decentralized Web. Did you guys actually create that term, or has that been around?
That's been floating around for a little while. We've embraced that term. We think it's the simplest description, decentralized websites, to distinguish between regular websites. And what makes a decentralized website is a blockchain domain, which is, as we've discussed, a domain which is stored inside of your cryptocurrency wallet, but also your website stored on a decentralized storage network like IPFS. And a traditional website would be stored on Amazon Web Services or another company like that. And so when you move it to a network like IPFS, you have dozens, hundreds, thousands of different people all storing the same copy of your website. And so if any one of them turns it off, goes down, whatever, your website doesn't go down.
Okay, that was actually going to be one of my questions. So IPFS is one of the decentralized storage solutions that you guys would interact with?
Yeah. And IPFS is the furthest along in the sense that they have a lot of developers. There's a lot of great tools, but there are other networks out there. And from our perspective, we're sort of network agnostic. It's really about what works best for users. But ultimately, what the user wants is the user wants to have a domain name they control, and they want to have content that is redundant, that has hundreds or thousands of different people all storing and serving up the same stuff. That way, you can't just get turned off.
Exactly, and that's honestly it's super important, especially now. I mean, we're seeing a lot of the censorship that's taking place not only with YouTube, social media, whatnot. But could you I guess could you point to an example of maybe some censorship that's ever occurred or is occurring with some sites these days?
Yeah, and I think the best way to think about this in general, it's kind of funny when we talk to people about this, this concept and internet censorship, and we talk to folks in America, and they're like, "Is censorship really a problem? Is it really that bad?" And then you talk to folks pretty much anywhere else on the planet, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I get it. Yeah, I had a domain name taken away from me last year, or something like that."
Wild.
Yeah, so it really does depend on where you are in the world, but that also speaks to the fundamental problem here. So, a couple of interesting cases that I think are good for people to keep in mind. So during the Catalonian independence movement a couple of years ago, there's a registry called .cat that was being run in Catalonia and being used by the independence movement to launch websites, organizing people, running votes, all kinds of stuff. And so the Spanish government raided the registry and took the entire registry down, put the CTO on trial for sedition, and I believe he's still on trial. And this was for what we would consider to be free speech, political organizing in a Western democracy. And this happened not so long ago. There was a change of political control in Libya, where an Islamist government came in. They have new moral laws that they created. And if you've probably seen people on the internet use .ly, because they think it looks cool. Well, that's for Libya. So the new Libyan government started taking down porn websites. The thing is that there's like a universal jurisdiction here, because the registry is licensed by a specific government, and then that government can get the registry to take down websites that are anywhere in the world. So you could be a Canadian porn company using a .ly and go down. You could be a German company with a .com and have the US government take you down. So because of the way all of this works, it creates this like global mechanism for various governments to be able to censor things. So that's just on the domain side. On the website hosting side, the Turkish government not so long ago passed a law that banned 150 terms from being used on any hosting service. If any hosting service hosts a website with any of these terms, they're breaking the law. And one of those terms was gay, and another one of those terms was naked. So they were essentially enforcing a moral conservatism on not just the Turkish population, but on anybody that wanted to use tools from companies that were based in that country. So this current system, and those are some extreme examples. There are some places in the world where you can't even get started. So the Turkish government says there's 150 words that you can't put up. If you were to try to launch something in Russia or in China, you would have even more restrictions at the front end before you can even do anything. So tools are making decisions about what's okay and what's not okay to say all the time, and they shouldn't. We don't need our tools to do that.
Agreed. I'm deep into decentralized solutions, but I had no idea about all these occurrences. But that's quite interesting. So .coms are actually like a registrant of the U.S. specifically?
So the way it works is, and this is kind of convoluted, but there are registrars like GoDaddy, and they are your custodians, and they are subject to whatever laws from the country that they're in, and they can receive subpoenas and whatever, and be asked to take down take away a domain, take down a website. But the registry itself can also do that. And so what happens is the registry, for example, .com, is owned by American company VeriSign, which means that the U.S. government has a lever through VeriSign, through .com, to essentially take down any website in the world that uses a .com, and .com is the premier extension. So that gives them a lot of power. They can essentially decide, they have an enforcement mechanism across the entire world, which they don't have on things that are not the internet.
Right. Wow, that's super interesting. And if you're allowed to tell us, or if you know this information, where do you think most of your services are being provided to, country-wise?
Yeah, so it's actually mostly US right now, but that's probably more a function of where our business relationships are. So, we're relatively early on in this journey. We were founded in January of 2018. The company is, based in San Francisco. We built up our network through kind of more, traditional startup methods. We went through Boost VC, which is based in Silicon Valley. We raised money from Draper Associates, from Tim Draper. Many of our partners are based in the US. So that's kind of where our marketing has been focused. But right now, what I would say, the way to to kind of describe where it's at, and I can talk about where it's at more broadly, but we've had about 220,000 domains registered so far. We've been going for about a little over a year, selling domains. We've got just under 2,000 websites that have launched, but websites just became easy to launch. So we started building tools where you can, with non-technical users, can easily launch something on IPFS. We just went live with Opera Browser. So Opera Browser for Android, you can type in a .crypto domain just like you would a .com, and you can view that website. This is the first time we're aware of that any major browser has supported a non-DNS domain name system, but it's all very early. So we're kind of in the experimental crypto phase. So the way we think this is going to go is that the crypto community is going to adopt first because they understand these tools, they need these tools. Like if you're a DApp and you don't have a decentralized website, are you really fully censorship resistant? You have these points of failure that are still there. And so we're starting to see a lot of DApps for this reason launch decentralized websites. So we've got MyEtherWallet has myetherwallet.crypto. Kyber Network has their exchange widget, kyber.crypto. So we're starting to see DApps take this seriously, and we think that's probably phase one. Phase two might be the kind of international activists and solving these kind of deeper free speech issues that we've been talking about earlier. I would say those people have not really gotten into the game yet, and they probably shouldn't, because the tech is still very early and hard to use. It's going to be the crypto native people that help us figure it all out.
What are the obstacles like to getting onto other browsers? I mean, you mentioned Opera, but what are the obstacles to getting on, like, Google or Brave, for example? I mean, I know Brave is just a version of Chromium, but could you go into depth on that?
Yeah, it's really, I think for partnerships, and this has been a really big focus for us. So for us, we are integrating with wallets, we're integrating with browsers, we're integrating with search engines, and applications just want to know that there's users. So there's no philosophical challenge for browsers to support this sort of stuff. It's really just like, is it worth my time for my engineers to go and figure this out? And is it secure, of course, would be another question. But broadly speaking, there's no philosophical issues. It's just, show me users and I'll let you in. And so that's really been our task, which is, and this idea of a decentralized internet and domains on blockchains has been floating around the crypto world, I would say, all the way back since 2013. There was an attempt with Namecoin, which was a fork of Bitcoin. And I think all along the problem has been UX, just like in general with crypto. It's just really, really hard to do this stuff. And so that was the problem that we set out to solve as a company. Was we know the decentralized internet is critical for free speech around the world. We know everybody already agrees that it's good. Why isn't it here? Because it's hard. So we should be focusing on the user experience. And that means make it easy to get a domain, make it easy to launch a website, make it easy to view a website, make it easy to find a website, make it easy to pay to a website, make all of the features that you would want for a decentralized web easy to use. And if we do that, then yeah, people are going to switch.
Exactly. And I was going through the site, and it's very clean, it's very straightforward. And so obviously you guys have definitely put a lot of time into your UX. So another question, are there any downsides to decentralized web?
So I think the thing that people think of the most when they think of a censorship resistant internet is what happens to all the bad stuff that can't be taken down. And I think this is an important question. And the way that we see it, well, first of all, the majority of people aren't going to do bad stuff. The majority of people use tools for good because the majority of people are trying to do good. And so it's always a minority, and it happens for every technology, including cash and everything else. But ultimately, I think the internet is going to become a easier place to filter if we were to switch to a censorship-resistant internet, because on the base layer you have this assurance that nothing can go down. So you have this trust, you have this permissionlessness, you have a new model of security that is almost impenetrable. And then on the second layer, you can always, as an application, decide what's okay and what's not. And so a browser can say, hey, this website is associated with a phishing scam. I'm not going to show it to you. Or I'm going to show you a warning and say, watch out, or any number of other solutions. And so what's going to wind up happening is that my browser can act as a filter for me, and I'm still going to wind up I'm not going to have to see all of the terrible, horrible things that happen in the deep, dark depths of the internet right now that I don't want to see. I'm not going to get flooded with those in this new world. But at the same time, if there's something that really does need to come up to the surface that people really do need to see, it's going to be able to break through. And no group, individual, government, or whatever is going to be able to stop that. So it's basically if society really wants something to be heard, it's going to be heard in this new world. So it's a complicated process for it all to kind of play out, but it's a far more secure and safe world. And what I think is going to wind up happening is applications are going to be able to easily share lists of warning and bad websites. Like right now, YouTube and Facebook supposedly filter content, and we don't know how. All we know is that they, the employees that have to do it are, essentially tortured, but we don't know what the criteria are, and they don't share with each other. These applications can read from a list that determines where the line is for free speech. Like what if the ACLU was the determiner of what was okay, and then applications were reading that, and then people decided that the ACLU wasn't moral enough or had a wrong view of free speech, and they could read from some other filter. But that's almost more like where the line for free speech is more of like an ethical question than it is some sort of like a process. And so we can take this ethical question and then we can actually address it head on. Whereas right now we don't get to do that. YouTube decides whether or not a crypto YouTuber has gone too far or not, and they've been taking down a lot of people lately. So I question their criteria, and I'm worried about the power that they have.
I totally agree with you. And we were talking earlier, I mean, there's so much censorship taking place right now, especially, surrounding coronavirus. And the WHO is giving guidelines to YouTube about what can and cannot be said. And I feel like with decentralized web applications, it kind of puts the power back in the hands of the people. Again, that's the whole point of decentralized solutions in general, just to start allowing the people to police the content and decide the filters for themselves. Because like you said earlier, I mean, I would say most people are inherently good. So if most people are inherently good and there's a very small minority of people that are bad, we can assume that the good people are going to filter the content themselves, and you don't need to rely on like Google or Facebook to do that for you. I like that.
And I think one of the most important things to keep in mind is that this argument about bad behavior is a red herring. It is being used to maintain the power of people who want backdoors into technology. The way that they're trying to push against encryption in the United States is by saying that if you don't allow us to listen in on every one of your messages, child exploitation is going to run rampant. And that is a red herring. That is an extremely dangerous argument to say that because 0.01% of people are going to do something wrong, therefore some group should have complete control over it. I can assure you a far larger percentage of people are using cash for bad reasons.
Yes, and much more cash. I 100% agree. We would get along. So yeah, I totally agree on that. You mentioned a couple websites earlier. Are there any like majorly popular websites? I guess My Ether Wallet's one, but any other websites that are using decentralized web solutions right now?
I mean, I think it's really in this sort of experimental phase. We're seeing applications pretty much, almost exclusively dApps right now, launching websites. The other category that we're starting to see are content creators, podcasts and YouTube videos and things like that. We've had several folks launch YouTube videos on their own decentralized website that had been taken down by YouTube. So very specifically saying like, hey, this video was taken down by YouTube. I'm going to put it up on the decentralized web as a backup or as a statement. So we're starting to see those. And I would say like crypto video and podcasters plus crypto dApps are really the area where we're seeing the most action, other than kind of enthusiasts. We've got, I think I mentioned there's a couple thousand websites up right now. Most of those that are on .crypto are enthusiasts that are experimenting with the tech, building new features, playing around. So I would expect that this stuff was really literally released, I would say, within the past 2 months, something like that. So all of this is really new. I think if you were to check back towards the end of the year, you're going to start seeing some applications with with decent sized traffic. And one of the other things that's still missing, and this is the problem with decentralized web, is that you have to kind of recreate the entire internet, is that we still don't have a functioning search engine yet. And so if you think about like what was the thing before the search engine, you really need to remember or have someone tell you, hey, like there's this really cool website and you got to type it in just right. The moment you have a search engine, you're just going to be like, well, let me see what crypto websites are out there. Let me see what decentralized websites are out there, and you're going to be able to find them much easier. So I think that's a missing piece, and I expect that we'll see some exciting stuff there, pretty soon.
Yeah, and wasn't Elastos working on some type of decentralized search engine? I could be wrong, but I believe there was some companies that were trying to create some type of decentralized search engine. Have you guys found any luck with any companies trying to do that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of exciting stuff happening on the search side. Nothing that we're quite ready to announce yet, but there's a bunch of projects that are going simultaneously. So there's more than one thing in the search space that we're excited about right now.
And then we kind of briefly talked about it, but what would be the ideal scenario if every website was decentralized? Obviously, it's going to take some time to do that, but I guess what would that scenario look like?
So we're going to need to, the first step is going to be, I think, more novel applications. So things that you can't do on the traditional world. And one of the biggest things that you can't do in the traditional world is payment stuff. It's so easy with a decentralized website because it's crypto native to do all kinds of new payments. You can charge 25 cents for a video that you've shown, whereas that would be impossible with a credit card system. So we're expecting that things that involve, just kind of money moving around easier, faster, better than it could before is going to be what we're going to see first. That's the reason why I keep focusing on the crypto dApps. That's sort of like phase one. I think phase two is going to be more the activists and media and content, people that can't publish online right now and will be able to. And that's going to have a dramatic impact on the world when that happens, because right now it's very easy to censor those people. Pretty soon it's going to be extremely hard to censor those people. One of the cases that we thought of is that you could actually have this kind of media website martyrdom move where you could launch a website and you could throw away the keys so no one can take it down.
Oh, that's smart.
That's going to be a crazy moment in time when there's a controversial website out there and literally no one can take it down no matter what happens.
That's awesome.
So that's going to be crazy. And then kind of like longer term, what's going to happen is applications and websites and businesses are going to change because these tools are so different, but many people will migrate, And so I think it's going to be like what we saw in the 90s and 2000s, where like a lot of businesses onboarded to the internet and they became digital businesses and they figured out how to sell online and they figured out how to do this stuff and they started to close their physical stores or they closed their call-in customer service departments and they figured out how to do it. I think the same is going to be here, where there's going to be a lot of businesses that are going to figure out how to migrate, and there's going to be a great migration. And it'll take years and years, but companies will eventually move their backends over because even if I'm not worried about censorship, it's just more robust. It's better and safer for you not to have one point of failure, not to have, something goes wrong with my Amazon Web Services, now my website's down. It's just better infrastructure. So longer term, that's how it's going to go. And the other thing is that if you think about it from like a cost perspective, so right now I go and I pay somebody for server space and there's, a few big companies that do it and they have these giant server farms. What if it was a marketplace where I could pay anyone in the world who happens to have extra space? Cost is probably going to go down, right? Server space is going to be cheaper. The infrastructure is going to be more robust. So of course, the internet is eventually going to move towards decentralized architecture. That's going to be a long migration for sure.
Yeah, it does seem like it's the next logical step in the kind of progression of the internet. Like you said, a lot of businesses closed up shop for the retail locations. They went exclusively on the internet, and then now the worry is no longer about your physical location. It's more about am I going to get censored? Am I going, for whatever reason, you just don't know, because we're seeing that on a grand scale. Like we mentioned, especially now. So I do feel like decentralized, web applications are definitely the next step, and I feel like it's going to be a gradual progression where people just think that it's just the most logical thing to do. So I agree with that. Another question. So the address is kind of like a wallet address, right, for your domain name, but the actual name of the domain is your address. Could you kind of explain that better than I did?
Yeah. So, and these two concepts do merge together. So it's not super easy. So you've got your domain name. So I've got brad.crypto. Brad.crypto is an NFT on the Ethereum blockchain. It's stored inside of my wallet. And because it's stored inside of my wallet, it itself is not an address, but it has an address that it's stored in. So there's, it's stored inside of a wallet. That wallet has an address. That's one thing. A completely separate thing is that you can use the domain as your payment gateway, meaning that I can attach any Ethereum address that I want to inside of any wallet that I control. I can attach any Bitcoin address, any Litecoin address, all to this one domain. And now you can go into a wallet and type in brad.crypto and pay me. All that's happening there is the wallet sees brad.crypto, goes and reads the blockchain, and finds my associated address. So it's really just a routing system.
Like forwarding.
Yeah, it's just a pointer. And it's the same way that domain names work, traditional domain names work with IP addresses. And it's the same way blockchain domains work with storage networks. So if you were to go and look up on the blockchain with brad.crypto, you would see my Bitcoin address, my Ethereum address. You would also see my IPFS hash. And they're all just attached to my domain name. And so depending on which application you type brad.crypto in, it'll go and find a specific piece of information that you're looking for. So if I'm in a wallet, it's going to find my crypto address. If I'm in a browser, it's going to find my website.
It seems really cool that you could just use your domain name to receive payments directly to that domain name. It just seems so much more logical, especially if you're trying to like give somebody your address and you're like, okay, it's a 1HBC, you know, that's not going to happen. But yeah, giving your domain name seems a lot more reasonable.
And we have dozens. That's the other problem. It's like, it's not just that each address is 20 or 40 characters, it's that you might have 20 of them. And you're going to have to navigate all these different addresses, all these different currencies. All of that stuff can essentially be abstracted. And I think that once we get to that point, that's when people are going to start using crypto for payments a lot more. Because like that's the experience that we currently have with money. Like if I want to send you, money on Venmo, I say, what's your username? And then I type that in. I don't go and get your account number and your routing number. Now, it's been possible for me to send you money through an account number and a routing number for years, right? No one did that. It wasn't until Venmo that people started doing it all the time. So that tells you the power of the username. I mean, PayPal was another one, and PayPal used email address. Same idea. So it takes that level of ease in order for people to adopt.
I agree. And speaking of ease, how easy is it for we'll call him Bob, the average person to go on unstoppabledomains.com and just check out, how could I make a decentralized website and domain? Like, how easy is that process?
We've tried to make it super easy, and we have the benefit of 20 years worth of domain and website tools that have existed in the traditional world. So if you've used GoDaddy, it should be about as easy as that. So you go to unstoppabledomains.com. There's a giant search bar. You type in a domain you want, find it, you check out. When you check out, you can pay with credit card or crypto or PayPal, whatever. Super easy. Once you have the domain, there's a manage section, just like you would see inside of a registrar like GoDaddy. And you just have fields. Copy and paste your crypto addresses, click save, sign a message with your private key, you're done. If you want to launch a website, there's a little like website builder tools, so it's kind of like a, WYSIWYG editor where you can drop in images and text, and it's all, this stuff is all, what we've built is all just like really early, simple demo tools, but it's enough to build a basic profile page, whatever. You click launch on IPFS, you sign a message again, you're done. It does not require a technical user. It does not require a crypto user in order to do all this. Now, there's going to be some concepts like I'm storing a domain inside of my wallet that it's useful if you understand crypto to feel comfortable with that. Otherwise, you may have some questions. But beyond that, it's at this point, I think I can say confidently, it really is about as easy as launching a website in the traditional world, or easier. And there's none of those weird delays. You launch a regular website in the traditional world, you buy a domain, it takes 60 days before they allow you to update the records. Blockchain doesn't have any of that stuff. You can launch a website, you can do everything in less than 5 minutes. You want to transfer that domain, you just send it to anybody in the world that you want. It's there in a minute.
Right. Love it. That's awesome. Wow, that's pretty awesome. So I guess the next question I would have for you is like, what are you guys specifically working on, or is there anything special that you guys want to highlight? And then where can they find more information, obviously, and then where can they find your social media?
Yeah. So right now we are really focused on top website launches. So I would look out for cool crypto brands launching websites. I think there's a big opportunity for people in crypto in general to launch websites right now. Whenever it's early, you have the ability to grab traffic because there's no competition yet. So same thing with the early web, where like you could build a pretty crappy .com website in the mid to late 90s and you could get some traffic. And I think we're kind of in that phase where there's a lot of opportunity now for people who want to get eyeballs, want to sell a product, want to market an existing product, whatever. So I would look out for top website launches. That's a really big focus of ours right now. If you want to find out more about us, though, I would check out our Twitter at Unstoppable Web. We have most of our updates there. Our Telegram community is also super active at Unstoppable Domains, and there's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week conversation in there. There's also a hacker channel if you want to go and join that and start work on building some websites. So there's a bunch of opportunities.
Awesome. And what about your personal social media? Do you have any?
I've got LinkedIn. That's pretty much all I actually use.
Yeah, keep it simple. I got way too much social media these days. Way too many. I got to keep track of them all. So awesome. Well, I mean, folks, you heard it. Decentralized web applications, unstoppable domains. I mean, they're doing some really cool stuff. Really appreciate you coming on, Bradley. It's been an awesome conversation, and I hope you guys can look more into decentralized web applications.
Yeah, thanks so much. We'll make sure and get this podcast up on our website too.
Oh, awesome. That'd be great. Thanks, man.